Hi and welcome to another episode of Hot Takes with me, the Silver Fox. We've got a few videos for you today. This is the first. They're very difficult videos. The subject matter is and of itself a difficult thing to discuss. For certainly for two of these videos, it's very difficult because it's, shall we say, unpleasant. It's an unpleasant subject, but one that I feel is important. But it's also difficult because YouTube doesn't like some of the things I'm going to have to say. So I'm going to have to be very, very careful and monitor the words I use for obvious reasons when you come to hear the videos. So we'll go straight in on the first one. But I will say, if you haven't yet subscribed, do hit that subscribe button so that you don't miss them today. They are sort of, as I say, I think they're an important thing that we must discuss. But it's just a very sad reflection on the times we live in. So we're gonna start the first one with the terrible things that are happening in Scotland, in particular with one of the things that's been said by one of the Green SNP, not SNP, one of the Green MSPs. This is the party that's in coalition with the SNP. They're friends and fellow travellers of the SNP and of Nicola Sturgeon. It's mentioned in the opening piece of the piece we're going to look at, in the headline of the piece we're going to look at. But I do have another sort of headline that I'm just going to flick onto to go into a little bit more detail. So really do hold on to your hats and be prepared to be, well, I don't know if anyone will be surprised given what's going on, but certainly be horrified at what is happening. Here goes. So, Tories slam Nicola Sturgeon for weaponising vulnerable children to boost a separatist agenda after the UK government blocks the SNP's shoddy and immoral gender identity law, while Scott Green MSP suggests 8-year-olds should be able to change their gender. Yes, the SNP and the Greens are in cahoots. It's a conspiracy of moral filth. And I've said all along that we know what the P in SNP stands for. They keep pushing these agendas onto children, and at every opportunity it's getting younger and younger. And now they're talking about basically sexualising 8-year-olds. That's where they're going. These are the people that are running Scotland. So Rishi Sunak is to block Scotland's gender identity legislation from becoming law. And good, because it will do nothing but harm women and children. And it is illegal, or at least if not illegal, it is immoral. The PM will use Section 35 of the Scotland Act to halt Holyrood's controversial overhaul. And the SNP's Nicola Sturgeon complained of a full frontal attack on Scottish Parliament. And let me tell you right now, let's get this out of the way, I would not want to see a full frontal attack from Nicola Sturgeon. And that is one particular growler that needs to be kept well and truly caged. Tories accused Nicola Sturgeon of weaponising vulnerable children to further her separatist drive today. There's no bottom. There is no level to which that woman would not stoop to push her anti-English hatred of the English agenda, her absolute drive to rid Scotland of the English so that she can immediately hand control of Scotland over to an unelected body in the EU. She hates Scotland. She hates England. She hates everything. She is filled with self-loathing. She is, if you opened her up, she'd be a squirming mass of hate, of nastiness, of dross and human shit. That's what that woman is. And I'm not going to sit on the fence. I despise her. I hate her. And she has caused no end of harm, not just to Scotland, but to women, to children, to everyone she ever meets. She is toxic. MPs lined up to support the Scottish Secretary Alistair Jack in the Commons as he laid out the reasons for wielding an unprecedented veto over the SNP's gender identity shake-up. Mr Jack said the decision was not taken lightly, but Westminster could not accept the adverse impact on a UK-wide equalities law. And Ms Sturgeon has warned it is inevitable that she will seek a judicial review of the move branding it a full frontal attack on Holyrood, and she will lose because it is the law. Mr. Jack was subjected to cries of shame by a noisy gaggle of, I nearly said P-word files, but it's actually SNP, although I believe the two are freely interchangeable. The government, he said, has looked closely at the potential impact of the bill and considered all relevant policy and operational implications, together with the Minister for Women and Equalities. And it's our assessment that the bill would have a serious adverse impact, among other things, on the operation of the Equality Act 2010. He says those adverse effects include the impacts on operation of single-sex clubs, associations and schools, and protections such as equal pay. Not that, just that. Also, it would give men the right, as I've said many occasions, to enter places like our crisis centres or DV hostels, places where vulnerable women who've already been victimised and who need protection, encouragement, support. The last thing they want is some bloke walking in and claiming to be a woman and sitting next down to them. And it could even be, and this is the thing, it could even be the one who attacked her. And there is nothing the law can do. And if you complain, you're the one going to prison. This is how bad this law is. And thankfully, that evil piece of human filth has had this law rejected, and quite right too. But that is not the worst of what that law would have done, and thank heavens that it's being refused. And I'm glad. Now it's the first time that this Section 35, which is the section in the section of the law in the passing of the sort of Scotland Act, allows for this to happen. It's the first time it's ever been done. It's 25, 30 years ago this law came in. So I'm not going to go into all the details of what's happened with the bill, but we just say that thank heavens that this bill is being refused, and that the people of Scotland can rest easy in their beds knowing that the women are some way protected, even though it took a Westminster Parliament to protect them and not the Scottish Parliament. And that's not the worst of it, because we have another headline here where I'm going to click and go over to this one. And this beggars belief. Green MSP Maggie Chapman claims Scotland should be exploring options for 8-year-olds to legally change their gender, and suggests that people don't know what their biological sex they are until they've had their chromosomes tested. Now, apart from the awfulness of going after 8-year-old children and parading the fact that she's determined to sexualise children as a virtue signal, she's saying she's being virtuous because she wants to do this to children, regardless of what the parents think. That woman should be chased out of town. But then I'm actually going to agree with her completely. She says that people don't know what their biological sex is until they've had their chromosomes tested. I'm going to go with this one. I think in this one, despite being an awful, awful human being, if she's barely that, I think she's quite right. So let's test these chromosomes. And so anyone who claims that, oh, but I'm a lady, will do what this MSP says. We will test their chromosomes and show them the result. And those chromosomes will say male. And that will be the end of it. And that person will be male. And that person will go to a male prison. And you won't have people doing awful, awful things. So Green MSP claims Scotland should explore options for kids to change gender. Yeah, they want to get their hands on the children. And this woman needs to be on a fucking register. She is a P, straight up danger to children. She also says it's a gross oversimplification to talk about sex being binary. No, it isn't. It absolutely isn't an oversimplification for sex to be binary, because sex is binary. And that is it. And no matter how much these mad, deluded, dangerous peas push this agenda, They cannot change the biological fact that sex is binary. So this is her. This is this mad, dangerous woman. She looks the sort, though, doesn't she? She doesn't look right. She doesn't look normal. She looks the sort that is a danger to children. Ms Chapman voted in favour of the Gender Recognition Reform Act. Of course she did. And sat on a committee that considered the legislation before it was passed by MSPs last year. This is a woman who did not want to hear from women who were victims of male, I can't say the word, but say, attacks, should we say, or R's. Yeah, DV and R. And she did not want to hear from those women because those women would give an opinion that was contrary to what she wanted to achieve. And what she wants to achieve is the final destruction of women in general and the pushing of an agenda to make children the objects of desire. And she's sick, and she needs to lose her position as an MSP at the next election, or possibly before. And the sooner she's out and takes that one with her, the better. But the main point of all this pushing in Scotland, of course, is to stop things like this happening. And this is another one of those things that they say, oh, this doesn't happen, and yet this absolutely happens. Are you ready? Go. Scotland. Serial R seeking transfer to women's prison following a name change. A serial R who targeted women in changing rooms and restrooms is now identifying as transgender and is seeking to be transferred to a women's prison in Scotland. Jonathan Mallon, 40, was sentenced to life in prison in 2014 on a slew of R charges. He's now begun referring to himself as Charlene and has allegedly been bragging that will be in a women's prison by the spring. This is a man who should, under no circumstances ever, be left with women. He is an absolute clear and present danger to women. But in Scotland, he will be marched straight in like a fox in the hen house. He will be given free rein and free access, and the women in that prison will not be protected. No one is safeguarding them because that's what Sturgeon wants. That's the level of Sturgeon. She is morally bankrupt and she wants to do this to the women of Scotland. She is awful. He is a monster and he needs to be, shown for what he is. And actually, he needs to be exposed in the male prison and put in Gen Pop with the male prisoners. Male prisoners who will have, mothers, sisters, wives, daughters, nieces, female friends. And then the guards need to just turn their back and walk away. And oh dear, look what's happened. Because that's exactly what would happen if he was put into a female prison. The guards would not be there 24 hours a day. And only this time it would be the women who would be suffering. And that is Sturgeon's Scotland. I'm coming up now. I really don't know how to describe how awful it must be to be a woman in Scotland when you're watching men enter safe spaces where you were previously protected, where if you're the victim, you're no longer protected, where if you go to jail, you're no longer protected, where the very offices of state are working actively to endanger you. And when they're not busy endangering you, they're coming after your children. What kind of absolute hell it must be if you're female and raising a family in Scotland, knowing that at every turn they're out to get you. And no one is safeguarding you or safeguarding your children. How can this have come about? And with the hate laws they've put in place, you don't even have the right to complain about it. Welcome to the dystopian future that the SNP desires. The complete and final destruction of everything that is moral or ethical or in any way good. These people are fanatical, hell-driven demons. They want to rule over hate and chaos, and they are achieving their very aims, and they need to be stopped. And I ask the people of Scotland to please, for God's sake, stop them and reverse everything they've ever touched. I'm going to finish now, but it's up to you, Scotland. You've got to do this. You've got to save your nation and save your children. Thank you for listening. If you like what you see and hear on the channel, please do hit that subscribe button. It's very important. It helps the channel. Please leave a like, leave a comment, share this video. And until next time, please stay safe, stay well, and never trust anyone in authority. Thank you and goodbye.